Kelly, middle school language arts teacher and author of the Lucia Chronicles. School is finally out for summer. Last week was my first official week. I had to go in for a half day. Sixth grade is going to be transitioning to the daily 3 for language arts, so stay tuned. For the upcoming school year, I will probably have some videos about my implementation and my learning experience with the daily 3 for language arts. If you don't know, that's part of the daily 5. That is a strategy written by the sisters. So I thought I would make a series about elements of literature. That was the name of the textbook that I worked with when I taught 6th grade, and pretty much every grade except 5th grade used the elements of literature. And I've taught 6th, 7th, and 8th, and 5th. So I thought that I would break down the 5 major elements of literature, which would be character, setting, plot, conflict, and resolution. Within each of those categories, there is there are many subcategories within each of those categories. So I thought that I would start today with character. So the basics of character that you need to know as either a writer or if you're teaching the elements of literature in your classroom are there are protagonists and antagonists. A protagonist is the main character in your story, and the antagonist is the person who antagonizes the protagonist, or your villain, or just the person who's kind of pitted against the protagonist. Now, there's lots of things that go on with characterization. So I guess where I want to start with is there are dynamic and static characters. And ultimately, you want your protagonist to be a dynamic character. And what I mean by dynamic is the character needs to undergo a change either through your story or through the series if you're working on a serial. So your characters need to be dynamic. For example, in the Lucia Chronicles, Lucia goes from pretty self-doubting and kind of insecure to coming into her own and realizing that she's powerful in her own right and that she is capable and that, you know, she can be autonomous and independent and doesn't need a guy or doesn't need her family. I mean, of course you need your family and your friends, but she realizes that she can stand up on her own 2 feet. So your characters need to be dynamic. Static just means that the character kind of stays the same. Oftentimes background characters that aren't the antagonist or protagonist, they may stay static throughout the whole story. So you have protagonist, antagonist, static, and dynamic. And then you have flat and round, which is kind of the same, in my opinion, as static and dynamic. Obviously, you want rounded characters. Your main characters are often the rounded ones, and the flat characters are often your supporting cast, if you'd like to think of it in that way. So we have all of that with character. And then on top of that, we have point of view. I'm going to put point of view with characters because I think they kind of go hand in hand. So the basic point of views is there are first person, second person, and third person. Second person we're just going to take off the table because really you don't use it unless you're writing a speech or making an ad campaign or something like that, because it's second person is you. So we're just going to take that off the table right away. You have first person, which is my choice, and that's my choice because I like to climb inside my character's head. First person uses the pronoun I, us, we. So when you see lots of I's, that is first person, and that is limited to that one character's perspective. I use Lucia's perspective in the Lucia Chronicles, and so that I'm limited to what she can see, hear, and think, basically. Then there's third person, and third person can branch off into 2 different categories. There's third person limited, where you're a narrator who can climb into maybe one character's head, but you're using the pronouns he and she. And third person omniscient basically means all-knowing. So if you're using third person omniscient, you climb in multiple characters' heads and you're getting multiple perspectives. And the thing about that, though, in my opinion, is it can be really overwhelming to keep track of who's feeling what and thinking what and saying what. And I think that as a writer, it's usually easier to start with either first person because you can relate it to yourself, or to work with third person limited because it's not quite as overwhelming. I dabbled a lot in Lucia Chronicles with different perspectives in my book, and then this month I'll be coming out with The Girl Who Wasn't Loved, which is the spin-off novella that is from the antagonist, Eve Malcour's perspective. So I play with point of view a lot, and I play with character development and, you know, creating dynamic characters, and even my villain in her own right is a dynamic character. So if you think about it, a villain is essentially the hero of his or her own story, even though we don't see them as heroes. So there's a lot going on with character, and it kind of naturally lends into conflict, but I'm going to keep it there for today. So I'm going to review for you. There is protagonist and antagonist, static and dynamic characters. Flat and round kind of goes hand in hand with static and dynamic. And then you have to decide what point of view are you using. Are you using first person, which is the I point of view? Are you using third person limited, which is using he or she but limited to one person's perspective? Or are you using third person omniscient, where you can use he, she, and they, but you climb inside multiple characters' heads? So that's my little quick video on characters and characterization, and look forward to the other elements of literature videos that are coming in this series. In the meanwhile, happy reading and happy writing.